In this video, I'm going to break down the top 3 mistakes that keep most people from being more productive. But even better than that, I'll share some of the best productivity frameworks that have helped me to make more money and have more free time. So to start out, let me ask you a question. Why do you want to be more productive? Having this question answered will drastically change the way we approach increasing our productivity, because most people just want to get more things done without really knowing why. And if we don't know why we want to do something, oftentimes we'll end up somewhere where we don't want to be. And you might have never asked that question before. Why do I want to be more productive? But for most people, myself included, the answer is some variation of making more money and having more time. By not answering this question, most people make what I think is the biggest productivity mistake you can make, which is to focus only on increasing their effort. And they do this because they haven't done the work to figure out why they want to be more productive. They believe that if they get more done, their life will be better as a result. Well, that's not always true, because most people are fairly driven and are able to figure out how to get more work done. But what actually ends up happening is they become so busy that eventually they get to a point where they burn out, and they might have even made their life worse than it was to begin with. At that point, most people try switching careers or going on a vacation, which doesn't work because the problem is not the career. The problem is ourselves. So if doing more is not the answer, then how is it possible for us to do less and be more productive? Well, first of all, it is possible, and denying this fact leads to what I'll call the second productivity mistake, which is to assume that all activities we do have equal value. More specifically, there are certain activities we do that take more effort and produce less value. I think we know this intuitively. But the reason that most people get caught in this trap is because they assume that productivity is all about the work that they're putting in. And if you only take away one thing from this video, it's that I hope you try to avoid thinking that way, and instead focus primarily on what you get out of your activities. So here is one example that I think might be familiar to some of you, okay? And it is that society has long imposed this idea that in order to be a good dad, you need to go to every one of your child's soccer and baseball games. And I think if you have the time, it's great to be at all your kids' games. But they might not be appreciating it enough to justify you sitting there for 3 hours. And in fact, some kids might even prefer that you miss the soccer game if it means that you can spend 20 to 30 minutes afterwards with them playing video games or having some other form of quality time. But it's clear to me that there are certain activities that we all do in our lives that produce more than others. And it's going to be different for everybody, but that doesn't negate the fact that it's true. Going even further on this thread, there's something that illustrates this called the 80-20 principle. The 80-20 principle is that for most people, 20% of their efforts will be producing more than the remaining 80%. So by evaluating our activities and pinpointing what this 20% is, we can drastically increase our productivity by taking effort from the remaining 80% and putting it into the high producing 20%. And in fact, by far the biggest jump in my productivity was when I embraced this principle. I listed out all of my activities in order of effort and fruits. And by fruits, I mean how much money and enjoyment I'm getting out of the activity. Then I took this list and I stopped doing all of the activities were at the bottom, and I took that effort and put them towards all of the activities at the top. Now I'll warn you, this exercise might make you feel a little bit lazy, and it also might cause you to violate some societal norms, but that's okay. When I was going through this exercise, at one point I went to my manager at work and I asked him to give me a list of activities in my job that were the most important. Then I took this list from him and I stopped doing all of the things that were not on this list. And that felt really drastic and lazy because I went from working 50 to 60 hours a week to only working 30 to 40 hours a week. But what happened was super surprising. Instead of my boss thinking I was lazy, he actually started to compliment me like I was working even harder than before. But anyway, if I was you and I wanted to be more productive, the the first thing I would do is try to apply the 80-20 principle to every area of your life. Now let's go a step further and take relationships. It might be uncomfortable for you to think about applying this framework to relationships, but for me, it's actually been super helpful. And I think that I'm a better husband to my wife because I apply the 80-20 principle to our marriage. For example, I used to try to spend as much free time with my wife as possible. But after taking our relationship and listing out all of the activities I was doing, I found that all of the activities at the top of the list were some variation of doing chores or doing work around the house. And if you're familiar with Gary Chapman's love languages, these all are part of the love language, which is called acts of service. So what I realized was that for my wife, in her eyes, I'm a better husband if I spend 15 minutes cleaning around the house than if I spend 3 hours with her sitting on the couch watching TV. And maybe your spouse or friends will have this flipped where their main love language is quality time. And in that case, you can take all your effort from doing chores and getting gifts and put that into just spending quality time with them. So while applying the 80-20 principle has been the biggest hack in terms of increasing my productivity, there is another mistake that is keeping most people from being more productive in 2024. And that is believing that time is money. And I'm going to prove to you right now that believing that is a mistake. So would you be happy if someone gave you $20 million today? Most people would. But if you had to end your life in order to get the $20 million, then would you do it? Most people wouldn't, even if it meant that their families would miss out on close to $20 million. So from this illustration, it's clear that our time is worth significantly more money than we think it is. While it's necessary to trade time for money at our jobs, we really want to try to avoid trading our time for anything less than the market will give us. More specifically, if you're able to work a little bit more in order to avoid doing chores and errands, you should definitely do that. What this realization leads us to is something called the buyback principle. It was made famous by a guy named Dan Martell, and he says that any activity that you can hire out for 25% or less than your hourly wage at your job, then you should do that with no questions asked. For example, if you make $20 per hour, you should take every opportunity to buy back your time for $5 per hour or less. Some great ways to do this are by using certain grocery delivery services like Walmart Plus, where you pay $13 once a month and you get your groceries delivered for free. If you order groceries from Walmart once per week and you going to Walmart for these groceries would take you about an hour each trip, then by using Walmart Plus for grocery delivery, you would be buying back your time at $3 per hour. So a little more on this grocery delivery example. Here's another way to think about it. Would you take a job shopping for yourself for $3 an hour? I bet you wouldn't. So for most people making around $20 an hour, you really should not be grocery shopping for yourself unless it brings you enjoyment. I think that the buyback principle is really cool and fun to use, and there are a lot of great ways you can use it to get some more time. Some of the other things that I've used to buy back time for myself, other than getting grocery delivery, is paying more for Cascade Platinum Plus dishwasher detergent because it saves me time rewashing dishes, paying for oil changes so that I don't have to spend the time to do it myself, and getting TSA pre-check so I don't have to wait in long security lines at the airport anymore. And actually, another way that I'm still working towards, because I don't quite make enough money to justify it yet, is paying for regular house cleaning services. I would love to have to do less chores around the house, but I need to make slightly more money in order to justify buying back my time in that way. And the buyback principle never stops as your income keeps growing. That's a large part of the reason that luxury markets like private jets and personal assistants exist. There are lots of cool ways that wealthier people are buying back their time nowadays. I'd love to make a video about this in the future, so be sure to like the video and subscribe to this channel if you want to see that video when I finally end up making it.